Here's an experience. Have you ever felt like when you've expressed your love to someone, and, even though maybe they didn't necessarily love you back, they certainly liked you back, it made them feel uncomfortable? Have you ever felt that over time, as you continued doing this more and more, it made them feel so miserable that they just walked away? Have you ever brimmed with self-hatred over the fact that you are so utterly unlovable that even when you give all of your love to someone, that does not make you worthy of them loving you back? If your answer to any of these was yes, your answer to the other ones probably also was yes. And first of all, let me say, I am so sorry you had to go through that. It is genuinely one of the most emotionally harrowing experiences that regular people go through. I do, however, have good news for you. That whole thing about being so utterly unlovable that even when you give someone all of the love that you have, you're still not worthy of being loved, it ain't true. That's not why people walk away from you. People walk away from you because of something you do, or rather something that you don't do, that you should start doing. The problem is that it's going to be one of the most difficult undertakings, but also one of the most worthwhile journeys you are going to take in your entire life. But first, let's talk about people you love walking away from you. Why does that happen? I mean, you're giving them all of the love and support that you have all the time. How exactly that is expressed is, of course, depends on the person, on what kind of your personal love languages are. Maybe you text them a lot to let them know you're there. Maybe you shower them in gifts that probably are very thoughtful. Maybe if that's the kind of relationship you have and you're a very physical person, you're always cuddling and touching them. None of these are fundamentally bad things to do. It's the way that you do them that matters. Because, and this is gonna get a little bit esoterical, but bear with me here, what you're trying to do, basically, let me just get this cup right here, which you can get, this is dusty, this is hella dusty, which you can get in my merch store. Is in the description and the bar below this video. I don't often do merch plugs, but to get the opportunity to do one in such an utterly shameless way in this particular video it's fantastic. Right, so this cup is full of all of the love that you have, that you want to give them, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to turn it over, and you notice that there's nothing coming out, right? If I had a third hand, I could go in here with a spatula, but I don't have a third hand, which I wasn't considering when I wrote the script for this video. But trust me, if I went in here with a spatula, the same thing would happen. Nothing would come out. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And you might be thinking, yeah, well, obviously nobody loves me, so I can't give love to anyone because I'm not receiving any. But that's not even the first paragraph of the full story. Because the kind of love that fills this cup is not the kind of love that you receive from other people. Without self-love, the act of you giving love isn't really an act of giving love freely at all. It is really a way of making someone else love you. You ever see those videos of the taps in Russia that they have, that they suck the water out of the glass? That's what's happening here. You can be doing all the things that you think are giving love. You can never explicitly demand anything in return. You can always be there for the other person at all times. It's not a matter of checking all the boxes. This is a thing where your intent, subconsciously and subtly, will influence your actions in a way that you cannot fake. You cannot pretend that you are giving someone love while you are really taking it. We humans are fundamentally a social species, and you could be the most autistic person in the entire world. You would notice if someone was giving you spades and spades of love desperately in order to get at your love, you would notice that there is something wrong. The more desperately you give, the more you take. And the fucked up thing is, it's not even your fault that you don't love yourself. It's your parents' fault. I know it sounds cliched, but the reason it sounds cliched is because it's factually true. In childhood, we emulate our parents in so many ways. And one of the key ways in which we emulate our parents is how we relate to ourselves. And if they don't relate to us by loving us unconditionally, that becomes the very foundation of how we think about ourselves. Because as a child, in that vulnerable state where you just accept everything that the grown-ups tell you, you pick up all manner of subtext that as an adult you don't even think about at any point. In that state of mind, the only reason that you couldn't be receiving love is that you are not worthy of it. And this becomes an incredibly deeply ingrained belief in your psyche. Very often this is also where the instinct to give a lot of love to other people if you don't have it yourself comes from. Especially if your parents loved you conditionally, if you fulfilled certain expectations. This is a sort of appeasement behavior that you did as an emotional self-defense mechanism to make sure that your emotional needs are met. Which obviously they still weren't. But loving someone isn't the same thing as appeasing them. Nothing could be further away from that. The simple truth is that as a child, you had a right to be loved unconditionally. And it is a crime that this thing, which once again you had an unconditional right to, was stolen from you while you were at your most vulnerable state. If you were not loved unconditionally as a child, what was done to you is a horrific injustice. And I see some of you are cringing in your chairs and on your couches and taking a shit in the bathroom. Oh, me? Well, maybe other kids, but my parents loving me unconditionally? I wouldn't have deserved that. Congratulations, you have won, knowing the fact that you should really re-examine your relationship with yourself a little bit. People who have self-love and who have love to give freely will do this in a way that is ever so subtly different from the people who don't have this. And this is, just to be clear, a spectrum. And counterintuitively, this can sometimes seem selfish even. People who do not pour from an empty cup are not constantly pouring, because they know that if they do that, eventually the cup will run empty. They know that sometimes, when times are really tough, they need some of that self-love for themselves, and they will of course also accept love from the outside that is freely given, because we are human beings and we need each other in our societies, our communities, and our tribes. When push comes to shove, they will prioritize their own emotional needs and as such be more quickly able to heal from the problems that they are having in any given situation. They have control over when and how they love, and especially for people who lack self-love, this can be extremely anxiety-inducing because it brings them back to a place where their parents would just stop loving them suddenly, just withdraw the love in order as a means to control them, or whatever fucking weird-ass reason their shitty parents had. It's not the same thing at all, but it's understandable why one would feel that way. This is often why people with no self-love end up with each other more so than people who do have self-love, because people with self-love will generally reject them after a while, and then they get addicted to someone else who is also in their situation where there is a constant agonizing stream of an outpouring of love in a mutual direction, which is empty calories. There's no actual meaningful love in there, but this painful facsimile of love is something that they mistake for the real deal, because for them, loving is always associated with pain. This, of course, creates extremely toxic, mutually dependent, really mutually addicted to each other relationships in which no one is happy. But okay, yes, we get it. If you want to be able to love others, you have to love yourself first, all that jazz. How the fuck do I actually do this? Well, as I've said before, it's a very difficult process, but people do it. It can be done. A lot of people learn to love themselves as adults. I like to think that I'm one of those people, and it's certainly not a journey that I'm at the end of yet by a long shot. It can take many years, you will have setbacks, you will have problems, and at the end, you won't be perfect, because obviously no one is perfect. Even people who were loved unconditionally during childhood do not perfectly love themselves at all times. And that's fine, because I see a lot of you now thinking that, oh, if I do this thing, if I learn to love myself, then other people will love me, right? Then when I do it, then I will get love back. And the funny thing is about that it really reveals a lot about your mindset and how you relate to yourself, that you don't want to be doing this for yourself. But nicely enough, as you go along this journey, you will realize the importance and how much worth it is to love yourself. So that's not even something I have to teach you. And obviously the best and most effective solution is go to fucking therapy. You really need it. But of course, I will admit that even in the nations that primarily my audience resides in, some of them are a bit underdeveloped in that they don't provide basic healthcare to all their citizens. There's many things that you can do without a therapist. They're not as good, they're not as effective, but they are something, and it's every step on the road counts. For example, affirmations. Some of you may have heard this term before. You stand in front of a mirror, basically, this is one way of doing it. You say, I love you, you are good enough, you are cool, whatever it is that you are having problems with. Ideally, even you might be complimenting the things that you perceive as flaws about yourself. And I know a lot of you are recoiling in horror right now as to how you could do something this incredibly disgusting. Just the idea of it makes you shrivel up inside. And that is an indicator of just how fucked up your relationship with yourself is, because people who have an abundance of self-love have absolutely no qualms doing this. Also, another act of caring for yourself is having basic hygiene, maybe even advanced hygiene or elite hygiene. I have a video for that should pop up. I think this is where the bar would be. And yes, enemies of the Jordan Peterson, this does include cleaning your room, which I personally am not the best at it, but that mainly has other reasons. You could focus on the positive stuff by writing a list of things that you like about yourself. Fundamentally, the process of learning to love yourself is destroying the bullshit, deeply ingrained belief that you are not worthy of love, and practicing that love for yourself with yourself. And really the best thing that you could do, and ideally it might be something that you do right after you watch this video, when you do feel somewhat motivated and your internalized self-hatred hasn't come up with a lot of different excuses as to why you shouldn't do this yet, all of which are bullshit, by the way. Go on Google how to love yourself. Do some research on your own. There's really nothing you can do wrong with the many different approaches that there are for this. And there's two crucial reasons for this. The first being obviously that everyone is different, and different people have different problems, different neuroses, and different strategies are going to work best for them. But also, just the act of going out there and dedicating time to yourself to better your situation and learning how to love yourself is already an expression of self-love. It's a seed that we're trying to plant deep in your foundational self-neglect that says, but what if I am worthy of love? And that is exactly what we're trying to cultivate. Thank you very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. Consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar, buying some of my merchandise or my short story collection. And in that spirit, it's completely normal to feel like self-love is gay and cringe. It's not. Or maybe it is, but really, if you can't be gay and cringe, what are you even here for? See you around, cunts.